Wildfires are tearing through California, leaving 38,000 acres scorched, $2 billion in damage, and thousands of families displaced. But here's the real story. This devastation didn't have to be this bad. Budget cuts, infrastructure failures, and questionable leadership decisions have turned a natural disaster into a man made catastrophe. So today, we're breaking down exactly what went wrong. Welcome back to Kharisma Daily. First, let's talk about the fire department. Now, the Los Angeles Fire Department, already stretched thin, faced a $17.6 million budget cut in 2024. Now, that's a 2% of its total budget. It may seem very insignificant, but it's a big chunk of that budget. Now, this is in a state where wildfires are an annual reality. Now, let's take a listen to what Fire Chief Kristen Crowley had to say as she addresses the budget concerns, warnings about reduced preparedness, and more. Take a listen.
I want to be very, very clear. Yes, we took a $17 million budget cut. And as we know, any budget cut would negatively impact our ability to carry out our mission. I want to also clarify that I'm not a politician. I'm a public servant. It's my job as the fire chief for Los Angeles City Fire Department to make sure that our firefighters have exactly what they need to do their jobs. And that's why I'm talking to you today. The Palisades fire, everybody's seen it. It is absolutely one of the most horrific natural disasters in the history of Los Angeles. And even with an additional 100 engines, I tell you, we were not going to catch that fire. But with that being said, let me be clear. The $17 million budget cut and the elimination of our civilian positions like our mechanics did and has and will continue to severely impact our ability to repair our apparatus. So with that, we have over 100 fire apparatus out of service. And having these apparatus in the proper amount of mechanics would have helped. And so it did absolutely negatively impact. I want to also be clear that I have, over the last 3 years, been clear that the fire department needs help. We can no longer sustain where we are. We do not have enough firefighters. With that, I have also requested multiple budgets, interim budgets, to show how understaffed, under-resourced, and underfunded the LEFD is. So with that, also, we have clear data that shows the LEFD needs more help. We need 62 more fire stations. These reports also show that we've had a 55% increase in overall call volume since 2010. And guess what? We're doing it with less firefighters. I was also directed to develop a plan as part of a budget reduction exercise, and that could equate to $48.8 million. And I rang the bell that these additional cuts could be very, very devastating for our ability to provide public safety. That would have resulted to 15 fire stations closing down and potentially the elimination of over 300 firefighters. Again, I want to be clear that I submitted a very large budget that will actually allow our firefighters to do their jobs. And I tell you,
There you have it. You just heard from Chief Crowley herself saying that these cuts impacted their ability to maintain core operations. Fewer firefighters, outdated equipment, and reduced training. All of this while fires' risk have been increasing year after year. We're asking our first responders to save lives with one hand tied behind their back. This is a crying shame. And it even gets worse. I mean, it's one thing to have, cut, reduce the budget for the firefighters and their ability to really respond to such natural disasters, which is an annual occurrence. But there are other factors that could have been avoided that could have reduced this catastrophe to something smaller than what it is. There would have been an impact, but not as severe as it is. This is a crying shame. Now let's move to a critical infrastructure failure that made this disaster even worse. The San Ynez, the Santa Ynez Reservoir, which holds $117 million, sorry, not million dollars, 117 million gallons of water, was offline for maintenance due to a tear in the cover. Now, the city chose to drain it completely. Can you imagine this? Leaving it unavailable during wildfire season. It was scheduled to return to service in February 2025. Now, my understanding was that it came offline back in 2024, February of 2024, which now means that they have planned to have this reservoir out of capacity or out of rotation for over a year. And this delay is costing not only money, it's costing lives, it's costing homes, it's costing animals, all the animals that have been died, all the people that have been injured or have died. The devastation is beyond words. Take a listen to what the Free Press Austin Jeffs, when he visited the Santa Ynez Reservoir that has been reported being that have completely been emptied since February 2024. Take a listen.
Was supposed to be the water to put out the Palisades fire. This is the Santa Ynez Reservoir. It's the water supply basically for the Palisades. When they first started fighting the Palisades fire, they ran out of water extremely quickly. Wednesday, 3 a.m., they were basically out. And there's been a lot of talk on why this happened. So how long has this reservoir been empty for?
Since February of last year. There was no communication from the Department of Water and Power to LAFD that there was a water supply issue.
The firefighters, when they started fighting the fires, no one informed them that the reservoir was empty.
This reservoir holds 117 million gallons of water. The fire department was using a water supply from 3 backup tanks, each one only holding 1 million gallons of water.
They say it's closed for maintenance to repair the lid that's on top of it. I don't know a lot about reservoir maintenance, but there's literally no construction materials or vehicles anywhere in sight. Also, with a reservoir like this, you can refill it or start to refill it. So another question is, if they saw the Santa Ana winds were coming and we have this remarkably dry wet season, why was there no attempt to start refilling it back up? I know I threw a lot out there, but I think we need some answers, guys. Some real answers here.
This is unfreaking believable. So he says that the backup reservoirs each hold 1 million gallons of water. So that's 1 million times 3, that's 3 million gallons of water that they used because, well, the main reservoir was out, and that main reservoir holds 117 million gallons of water. So you do the math. 3 million versus 117 million. People, there's some heads got to roll for this. Okay, but let's continue. Now, this reservoir could have been a vital water source for firefighters battling these flames. Instead, they've had to rely on the alternative and less efficient options. Who approved this timing, and why wasn't an alternate water place or plan, in place for one of the most fire zones or areas in California? Can anyone answer that question? Now let's move on to, I think, the nucleus, the foundation of this catastrophe, the leadership, the incompetence, and I don't even know how to describe this type of leadership. Because if it wasn't for the leadership, we would not be having this chat today. This would not be a thing. This would be, yes, it would have been covered on the news. There's fires, the natural fires, and they would have been contained. And this devastation that we're seeing today would not have been realized. Now, it baffles me that while the Los Angeles was burning, the mayor Karen Bass was attending an event in Africa for the inauguration of Ghana's president. Can you believe that? And 3 years ago, she said in an interview that she wasn't going to travel, but she lied, and she's traveled 4 times since then. Go figure. There was no water in the Palisades to fight the fires. Yet the city's leaders were out of the country during one of the most catastrophic wildfires events in recent history. Take a listen here.
My heart goes out, obviously, to the people with their homes, and I'm watching the small businesses around us go up in flames. This is people's livelihoods, so it's devastating. But what is most concerning to me is our first responders and our firefighters who are trying to battle this. There's no water in the Palisades. There's no water coming out of the fire hydrants. This is an absolute mismanagement by the city. It's not the firefighters' fault, but it's by the city. And I'm going to be very honest. We've got a mayor that's out of the country, and we've got a city that's burning, and there's no resources to put out fires. So if you look at your pictures, you don't see the firefighters there because there's nothing they can do. And it looks like we're in a third world country here. Mm-hmm. And we've got a lot of tough questions that we need to ask the mayor and the city council and our representatives and the county representatives. Why didn't you work to mitigate this? What was your brush mitigation program? I heard you earlier talking about it's been dry because there hasn't been rain. That's not the biggest problem here. The brush up in these hills that are controlled by the city and the county, I would bet you that if they haven't been handled, mitigated, pruned, removed for probably 30 or 40 years. This was a disaster waiting to happen. And what's predictable is preventable. And who's paying the price are all of these people in their homes and their businesses tonight. Now, we'll rebuild, but the majority of this community is going to have a tough time rebuilding their lives. My heart goes out, obviously, to the people with their homes, and I'm watching.
Wow. What's predictable is preventable. Let that sink in. 99.9% of this catastrophe and devastation was predictable. In the sense that this is an annual occurrence where when there's drought, there's no rain, the brush can get caught up in, and create fires. And if there was no budget cuts to the fire department, if there was water in the main reservoir, this could have been avoided. Now, Mayor Bass has also faced backlash before the budget cuts to the fire department under her administration, and rightly so. Now, these decisions have left the city vulnerable. Yes, and we're seeing that, and residents are paying for that decision. Residents are asking, where was the foresight? Clearly, there wasn't any foresight. There wasn't any preparedness. There wasn't a plan. She's more busy traveling and going overseas to different places on taxpayers' money when she said she made a promise 3 years ago to those residents, to the citizens of California, and saying she wasn't going to travel as long as she was mayor. And she lied and she broke that promise. And while the biggest devastation that could have been avoided, she's in Ghana attending the inauguration of the Ghana's prime minister or president or whatever it is, right? Which is ridiculous. Why wasn't the wildfire preparedness a priority? Because clearly it wasn't. These are the questions the mayor and the city leadership must answer. And then now I'm talking about answering. Let's hear what she has to say when she was confronted on her way back to California from Ghana. Let's hear what she had to say.
Owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning. Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today?
Can you back up, boss? Appreciate it.
Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster? No apology for them? Do you think you should have been visiting Ghana while this was unfolding back home? Madam Mayor, let me ask you just again, have you anything to say to the citizens today as you return?
No. They're gonna come. Ma'am, hold on 1 second.
Madam Mayor, just a few words for the citizens today as you return to deal with the catastrophe.
Can you take this down?
David, as you say, she wasn't very keen to answer any of your questions there. And fire chiefs are also admitting that they just don't have enough personnel to take out the fires.
Yeah, they're fighting all sorts of challenges. They're talking about a water shortage. There are reports of fire hydrant failures. They've been unable to use firefighting aircraft for much of the day due to the smoke that is billowing ominously from the hills where the wildfires are raging. And I suppose despite that political storm, this is, of course, at its heart, a human story, because we've now 80,000 people evacuated. Tens of thousands of others are on standby to be evacuated. 2 lives have been lost in the Eaton fire, which is what's causing the consequence behind us. The city's iconic landscape almost shrouded completely by the smoke. And they're really just taking it one step at a time, hoping at some stage the wind's going to change direction or to die down, and that they're going to be able to get this fire under control.
Very sad indeed. Did you hear what she had to say? Did you hear? Because I didn't hear anything. She said absolutely nothing. She responded with nothing. This woman is outrageous. Like, it baffles my mind that we put these people in leadership positions and they don't come through when they're supposed to. She's probably another DEI hire. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that later in the week, about these DEI hires that of all surface in this disaster. But as I close, I just want to say this isn't just a natural disaster. It's a preventable tragedy. Budget cuts, poor infrastructure planning, and absent leadership have all contributed to the devastation we're seeing today. But this can't just be about pointing fingers. We need real solutions, okay? We need real solutions, and we need leaders who are there for the people. The city must reinvest in firefighting resources, ensure essential infrastructure like reservoirs are always operational, and hold leaders accountable for their decisions. We also need stronger disaster planning and stricter prioritization of wildfire prevention, because if we don't, or if they don't, this cycle will repeat itself and more lives will be lost. Now, California deserves better. We can't keep blaming nature. And this is what they want to do. They want to blame nature when this was predictable and preventable. When poor human error and poor leadership are making things worse. Thanks for watching. Let's keep the conversation going. Share your thoughts and comments below, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care and bye for now.